The early Church Fathers on the Catholic Bible. Catholic Bibles have an Old Testament that is longer than the one found in the Protestant Bibles. The extra material consists of 7 additional books, as well as some additions to the books of Esther, Jeremiah, and Daniel. Catholics refer to these books and passages as a deuterocanonical, which means that they are part of the canon of Scripture. Protestants refer to them as apocryphal because they believe it basically means that they don't place them on the same level as Scripture. Catholics accept them because they are part of the Septuagint. The Septuagint was the version of the Old Testament that was used by Jesus, the Apostles, and the early Christians. The extra books are Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, the Wisdom of Solomon, Sirach, Ecclesiasticus, Baruch, 1 Maccabees, and 2 Maccabees. Clement of Rome wrote in 95 AD, "By the word of his might God established all things, and by his word he can overthrow them." I quote, "Who shall say to him, 'What have you done?' or who shall resist the power of his strength?" He was quoting from the Book of Wisdom. Tertullian wrote in 211 AD, quoting from the Book of Baruch, "For they remembered also the words of Jeremiah, writing to those over whom that captivity was impending. And now you shall see borne upon men's shoulders the gods of the Babylonians, of gold and silver and wood, causing fear to the Gentiles. Beware therefore that you also do not be altogether like the foreigners, and be seized with fear, while you behold crowds worshipping those gods before and behind. But say in your mind, our duty is to worship you, O Lord." Quoting from Baruch. Hippolytus, also quoting from Baruch in 205 AD. "But they make use also of other testimonies, and say, Thus it is written, This is our God, and there shall none other be accounted of in comparison of him. He hath found out all the way of knowledge, and hath given it unto Jacob his servant, and to Israel his beloved. Afterwards did he show himself upon earth, and conversed with men." Irenaeus of Lyons also quotes from Baruch in his book Against Heresies. I quote, "And Jeremiah the prophet has pointed out that as many believers as God has prepared for his purpose, to multiply those left upon earth, should both be under the rule of the saints to minister to this Jerusalem, and that his kingdom shall be in it, saying, Look around Jerusalem towards the east, and behold the joy which comes to you from God himself. For God shall go before, and with joy in the light of his splendor, with the pity and righteousness which proceeds from him." Clement of Alexandria from 191 AD. "A fool raises his voice in laughter, says the Scripture, but a clever man smiles almost imperceptibly." Quoting from Sirach. The clever man, in this case, he calls wise, inasmuch as he is differently affected from the fool. But on the other hand, one needs not to be gloomy, only grave. "For I certainly prefer a man to smile, than has a stern countenance, than the reverse, for so his laughter will be less apt to become the object of ridicule." Origen from 202 AD. Those then will not escape the curse of yoking an ass with an ox, who, judging certain things not to suit them, command others to do them, or the reverse. The Scripture has briefly showed when it says, What you hate you shall not do to another. He was quoting from Tobit. Quotes from Maccabees. "But that we may believe on the authority of Holy Scripture, that such is the case, hear how in the book of the Maccabees, where the mother of 7 martyrs exhorts her son to endure torture, this truth is confirmed, for she says, I ask of thee, my son, to look at the heaven and the earth, and at the things which are in them, and beholding these, to know that God made all these things when they did not exist. Cyprian of Carthage in 250 AD. And again, where the sacred scripture speaks of the tortures which consecrate God's martyrs and sanctify them in the very trial of suffering, and if they have suffered torments in the sight of men, yet is their hope full of immortality, and having been a little chastised, they shall be greatly rewarded, for God proved them, and found them worthy of himself. As gold in the furnace he has tried them, and received them as a sacrifice of a burnt offering, and in due time regard shall be had unto them. The righteous shall shine, and shall run to and fro like sparks among the stubble. They shall judge the nations, and have dominion over the people, for their Lord shall reign forever. Quoting from Wisdom, that's Cyprian, 250 AD. Holy Scripture meets and warns us, saying, And fear not the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he is lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is turned into his earth, and his thoughts shall perish. That's quoting Maccabees. Methodius in 311 AD. And that you may not take refuge behind a safe wall, bringing forward the scripture which says, As for the children of the adulterers, they shall not come to their perfection. Quoting from Wisdom. He will answer you easily, that we often see those who are unlawfully begotten becoming to perfection, like ripe fruit. Athanasius. But of those things, such like inventions of idolatrous madness, Scripture taught us beforehand long ago, when it said, The devising of idols was the beginning of fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life. For men, either serving their calamity or tyranny, did ascribe unto stones and stocks the incommunicable name. Quoting from Wisdom. Hilary of Poitiers in 356 AD. For all things, as the prophet says, were made out of nothing. 2nd Maccabees. It was no transformation of existing things, but the creation into a perfect form of the non-existent. Ambrose of Milan in 391 AD. Justly then is he wise who has received the Lord to know when he ought to speak. Wherefore the scripture says well, A wise man will keep silence until there is opportunity. Quoting from Sirach. We have spoken of its beauty and proved it by the witness of Scripture. It remains to show on the authority of Scripture that there can be no fellowship between it and vice, but that it has an inseparable union with the rest of the virtues. It has a spirit of sagacious, undefiled, sure, holy, loving, what is good, quick, that never forbids a kindness, kind, steadfast, free from care, having all power, overseeing all things. And again, she teacheth temperance and justice and virtue. He's quoting from Wisdom. John Cassian, 425 AD. Where, as Scripture says, when you go forth to serve the Lord, stand in fear of the Lord, and prepare your mind. Quoting from Sirach.